Thank you for joining our webinar, Robotics, Navigation, and Artificial Intelligence, the Future of Orthopedic Surgery. Our moderator for today's panel discussion is Mike Evers, Digital Content Strategist at OrthoWorld. He's joined by three members of industry. Leanne Teplitsky is Worldwide Vice President and General Manager of Technology and Data Solutions at Zimmer Biomet. Brad Clayton serves as President and CEO of Fusion Robotics, and Peter Varillo is co-founder and CEO of NHatch. Our webinar sponsor is Intech. Intech is a global market leader and game changer in the manufacturing of orthopedic medical devices. With manufacturing facilities around the world and unique orthopedic initiatives, Intech is at the forefront of technological innovation, including instruments for robotics and navigation, as well as asset management solutions.
Hello, and thanks for joining us today. We have a terrific panel with us, and I'm really excited to hear directly from the folks who are driving innovation in the orthopedic industry. But before we jump into the questions, let's get to know our panel. Leanne, could you give us a little of your background in the industry and describe what you're working on at Zimmer Biomet?
Absolutely. Hi, thank you very much for having me here today. So my background, I actually spent over 20 years now in med tech. A large majority of that was actually in the cardiovascular space. I joined Zimmer Biomet a little over a year ago to really join an organization that's trying to change the game in orthopedics. And we have just launched ZB Edge, which is an integrated suite of currently available and forthcoming digital and robotic technologies. And so it includes everything from our planning software to our MyMobility with Apple Watch platform and Rosa Robotics. And everything is connected together through our OrthoIntel intelligence platform. And I have the privilege and honor to be able to drive all of those technologies forward and to market.
Great, thanks. Peter, can you talk a little bit about your career path throughout the industry, and what do you aim to accomplish with NHatch?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think when I look back at how I started, it feels like everything we've been working on in our careers, and I say we because there's several of us in the team who've been together for almost 20 years, started off at Stryker in the 90s. So I was an intern working on $1 billion knee, but before it was $1 million knee company. And that product became a huge success for the company. It was called the Scorpio knee. I came back after graduation, and I wasn't, ready to take on my own project. This time we did an international version, high flexion. When we designed those original knees, it was off of such limited amounts of data. So we knew that was a challenge. We were measuring x-rays. And in this next phase, we developed a shoulder system that Tournier eventually acquired, and now Stryker has, called the Equalis Ascend shoulder. And that shoulder was the first data-driven shoulder that we had heard about, really focusing a lot on the CT data. So each time I went on to a new venture, I try to get to that next phase of incorporating more and more data and understanding how to design the prosthesis better. So now with NHatch, we're really building a platform to allow any company to do that from the ground up and make it an integral part of their solution that they deliver to their customers. So understanding the data as it comes in, preoperative planning based on AI, and extracting data from MRI, X-ray, CT scans, and really pulling that together into this full feedback loop. So we need to understand how each part of the surgery and each step of logistics happens, and that's what we're building now at NHatch.
Thanks. And then, Brad, what should people know about your experience in orthopedics and Fusion Robotics?
Hey, thanks, Mike. Thanks for inviting me. I've been in the med tech industry for 30 years now, and a large part of that was with Software Organic and Medtronic launching the Stealth Station and the O-arm and a bunch of the Midas Rex products. So a good breadth of experience in the spine world, not the orthopedic per se joint world. And so through that, we've gained a lot of knowledge and experience. We have a very mature team. I think we've all worked together, probably along the lines of 25 years. And what we've done is we've focused on trying to bring a solution to the market that is focused on helping the surgeon and making the surgeon more efficient with our robotics platform. We're focused on, a compact solution, a very efficient solution, and a very economical solution. So that is our focus, is trying to bring technology in the affordable price range to the spinal community.
Great. And that's a perfect segue as we move into our discussion. Let's start off with the cost justification of these technologies. Peter, in your opinion, what are the current strongest clinical and economic justifications for the additional expense of these new technologies?
I think that's important to think about the past to understand where we're going into the future here. So we started with analog, like surgeons had a saw, an osteotome, and they did things very analog. They built instrument sets to make things more accurate. They added navigation systems to progress. Each time we did that, there was more cost for the device company. There was more cost for the system as a whole. Prices went up. And now the latest version of this is around robotics. And ultimately, robotics will lead to a cost reduction in many ways and savings. But there's got to be this phase where it's driving more expense at the current moment to get that greater degree of accuracy, repeatability, to get those correct results that we're really looking for, those optimum results for that patient. And it'll take time. This is not an overnight robot comes out and it's magically perfect. It's going to learn and it's going to get better. And the next generation after that will benefit from these surgeries happening now.
And Brad, it sounds to me like one of the ways Fusion Robotics addresses this is by being highly focused. Can you talk about your perspective on the economics of the technology in orthopedics today?
Sure. We are focused on, what the industry does today is placing pedicle screws. And I agree that in the future, each iteration is going to bring more capability to the systems, and we'll overcome hurdles, and there'll be different technologies or consumer electronics that'll help us get there. At this point, I don't think that we are economical. I think that, the people who are buying our systems and using them in the hospitals are learning they take more time and, they're expensive, but they're leading the way by doing the surgeries, which will get us to the end goal. I mean, this is a typical market-driven process, and we'll get there. Will it change in 5 years? Some. I think we'll start seeing the costs go down. I think it'll be another decade till we truly see some real differentiated capabilities that come that add value.
Thanks. And Leanne, robotic systems from the largest orthopedic players tend to be significant capital investments. At Zimmer Biomet, how are you handling these questions regarding cost versus benefit in the current day?
I think that we're at this tipping point for technology in general in orthopedics. There's a lot of factors that are driving that forward, whether that's, still 1 in 5 patients are dissatisfied with their knee, right? Or the length of stay hasn't really improved over time. And COVID-19 certainly has pushed us to the boundaries of how we leverage technology, let's say pre and post-operatively, trying to figure out remote care. So I think that above and beyond anything else is lending itself well to this adoption of technology. For better outcomes, as the other mentioned, and as well as figuring out the economics, again, pre and post-operatively. If post-operatively you can enhance care remotely versus having to come in and you can demonstrate that, you don't get readmissions and remote care is just as good as coming into the office. I think there's a lot that we're going to be able to do there. And we've demonstrated some of that with our My Mobility platform, but holistically, I think improving on that entire continuum of care is going to lend itself well for the adoption of technology and for talking about the economics around it and the value around it. And then I would say finally, patients. Patients, I think, are really going to drive technology into their healthcare. We're using it every day now in our day-to-day lives. They're getting used to it across the spectrum. Young and older patients all are leveraging technology in their day-to-day lives. And I think they're really going to demand it in their healthcare as well. And so as industry players, we are going to find ways to ensure that it's a value add and what we bring to the table is worth any of the economic impact. But I do think that long term, we're going to be able to demonstrate that by leveraging these technologies, we will be able to overcome some of the challenges that we have today, let's say on length of stay or on those patient outcomes. And over time, we'll demonstrate that it is absolutely a value add.
And if I could, I'd like to maybe stick with Leanne here for a moment, but open this up to everyone. As we see procedures continuing to shift to the ASC, orthopedic companies are increasingly focused in that space. How might that impact cost consideration for these large capital purchases?
I absolutely think that is happening today. And I think we find ways not necessarily to have to make the large capital purchase, but through utilization. We're always looking for different ways and different business models to ensure that everyone can get the technology, because again, as we know in our hearts, we really feel that it's going to make a difference to that patient, and it's going to make a difference to that surgeon and his or her practice, and to the overall efficiency of the care that's delivered, so they can get more throughput, by, again, remotely monitoring the patient, so you can get a new patient that can come into the office. I absolutely think that shift is actually going to drive technology even further, because they're going to want faster and faster iterations to make their practice better and better and more accessible to more and more patients.
Yeah, I'd have to agree too. I feel like if we look at the speed of processors, if we look at just look at your camera pictures from 10 years ago and look at them now, and like, how do we even like understand what we were looking at back then, right? On your iPhone or your Android. All these things are improving. In everyone's pocket, there's inertial sensors that are tracking us going up and down the stairs and how many times we step, and you name it. And this is an important part of that feedback loop that the medical device companies need. So I think ZB is doing a great job at this. It's one of definitely the leaders that I've seen that in big ortho. And I think that's a critical part of this process. Every company needs to get there. Every company needs to produce this kind of system. And it's a massively important thing for us to do, to understand the clinical outcomes of the patient and how that ties to the pre-op plan. Yeah, we need to do that to evolve orthopedic surgery and evolve implants and what we do every day.
Yeah, and I think that as we get into the next question, we can address some of this. But I do believe the ASC market and environment is going to drive efficiency, and it's going to drive lower costs. If you can't make it more efficient, it's not going to be adopted, because it's got to be safe, efficacious, because they're risk adverse. They're not going to bring patients to the ASC that are difficult. It's going to be the easier patients, and it just can't impact their time. If it does, the technology is not going to be accepted.
Thank you. Let's shift a little bit, talking about the sophistication level of the currently available technology. Something that we've heard from surgeons is that sophistication level of orthopedic robots compares unfavorably to other industries. So, Brad, how would you characterize the level of technology available today in orthopedics? And I think you mentioned previously, but you think we're farther away from a truly transformative innovation there, right?
Yes. I think that the sophistication of the systems is actually quite high. It's not a Boston Dynamics robot dog, but if you compare it to a lot of the robots in the world, the sophistication's there. But they all act as essentially tool holders today. They'll hold a tool for a pedicle screw. They'll act as a no-fly zone for a knee. And all of that comes down to the challenge of you're not dealing with an Amazon box going down a conveyor line, or you're not a hood of a car with index points. Every patient is different. Every patient is a complex shape. And in spine, every patient is a moving target. And to get over those challenges is the challenge. It isn't the robot per se. It's the environment it's in. I think that, there are opportunities coming up that, in the next decade will help with that. But it's a challenging opportunity. Everybody's spine is different. It's moving when you're doing surgery on it. the robots today can move, but they just don't know where to move to.
Thanks. Leanne, how are you tackling some of these challenges that are unique to orthopedic surgery at Zimmer Biomet?
I agree. I think that we are at a pretty good level of sophistication, but we will continue to evolve and get better and better as we go forward. So, one of the first things that we really wanted to focus on introducing robotics into orthopedics was to ensure that we could make a smooth transition from standard instrumentation into robotics. So making the tools follow along kind of a normal surgeon workflow, that the mind share we could get there to leverage robotics. They weren't really uncomfortable doing it. And then from here, we're going to continue down the path to really better understand exactly how the implant should be positioned, exactly where we want to make those bone cuts, what the accuracy looks like, what different measures within the OR become more and more important as we go forward. And I think that we're going to get more sophisticated in how the robot may deliver, some of those measures and the information that you gather within that particular procedure. But it's also going to be leveraged, again, pre and post-operatively. We need to reach further upstream, sort of reach further downstream. And I think a lot of the sophistication is going to come in being able to connect the dots pre, intra, and post-operatively to really be able to guide that exactly where the implant should go, or the kind of implant a patient should get, a partial knee or a total knee, for example, who is best suited for what. And we can look at those sort of a digital twin, I guess you would call it, and really be able to understand what is the best pathway for that particular patient along their full continuum of care. If they're going off a little bit on their recovery, can we get them back on track because we know what works and what may not work so well for patients? So I really think that's where more of the sophistication is going to come in as we get these clinical insights across the continuum of care. It can guide how we build and change and evolve the technologies that we use, both intraoperatively as well as pre and post-operatively.
Yeah, that's a great point. In another conversation I had with a surgeon, the surgeon pointed out the avalanche of data that can come out of these systems. So, Peter, in terms of data collection and analysis, what are some of the ways that technology can allow surgeons to benefit from this vast array of data that's being created?
Surgeons have this kind of innate algorithm, innate 3D modeling solution. They've got this ability to do it all in their heads while they're directing an entire OR of people. And, when we think about robots in surgery today and compared to what a surgeon's doing, pretty far apart today. But it'll definitely get there, right? It's just going to take, like the panel's been discussing, greater sensor technology, greater intraoperative data, greater preoperative data. I don't know if anyone's following imaging, but there's some incredible things around imaging and getting color out of imaging. So we can actually identify different objects differently. So I think with the sophistication of the technology that we're reading increases, and the sophistication of technology during surgery and even after surgery, and as we link them together, we'll have some really interesting things to analyze and compare. And most importantly, for the software systems and the AI to learn from. So that's the thing that we don't have petabytes of data yet on every single activity that went into the surgery. It's really taken a lot of the companies a significant amount of time to collect some data and get some of the data out of the robots and off of the different devices that they have. But over the next several years, that's just going to multiply now that most of these systems are on the market, that they're cloud-based, they're collecting the data, and we're going to keep introducing new and new technology into that. So where we are today is just like it's a little glimmer into where we're going to be in 5 years and 10 years. It's exciting.
One of the things that I thought was really interesting as we closed 2020 was the extremely robust sales of robotics last year, despite, the concurrent pandemic-related declines we saw across knee, hip, and spine. Leanne, Zimmer Biomet's robotic sales had a fantastic finish to 2020, but what are you hearing from customers in terms of training and utilization rate for these newly placed systems?
So I think we're at kind of the beginning of something we were talking about, is going to ramp quickly here, sort of have some kind of a snowball effect. We were, I think, when the pandemic started, wondering what was going to happen, where are we going to be with respect to robotics? And there was a huge demand for getting robotics into centers. That didn't seem to be something that was being held up in any way, shape, or form. And I think it speaks volumes to the perceived advantages or the advantages that people have felt, over time on the utilization of it. And so I think that, again, we're at the beginning and it's going to ramp very quickly. The idea here of just introducing technology into orthopedics in general, again, as we said, we're kind of at the beginning of all of it. But if you look across healthcare, so I'm coming from the cardiovascular industry, as I mentioned before, and technology and remote follow-up is very, very well accepted and is used almost 100% of the time, honestly, right? They use some kind of form of technology across that entire continuum of care. I think now that we are getting some onboarding, we bring a competitive, robot into the market. And I think then all of a sudden, there becomes that good, healthy tension where, whether the surgeon's demanding it or the patients are demanding it, that the adoption and utilization has gone up significantly. I think then people, to your point and question around training, of course, people want to get on board. They don't want to be left behind, this kind of train that's happening with respect to both robotics as well as just, again, technology and data across that entire continuum of care.
What, in your opinion, are some of the barriers or obstacles that these technologies need to overcome to achieve that widespread acceptance and use?
Yeah, I think one is that they need to be in every OR, right? Physically, we can't have every major manufacturer's robot in one OR. There are some independent companies who've developed robots that will obviously act as more like an open source approach, but those haven't been the ones that have been out there and getting to the same level of traction in the market. So that's growing much more each year. But I think there's this argument for a universal system that everybody's building and working towards. That's obviously counter from what's being built today. That's not how it's being done today, but we have to move to a point where we are advancing and we are looking at more and more procedures done this way. We'll have better data on how they were done, why they were done the way they were. This kind of interoperative data flow that we've never truly had is critical to the industry success. It's the way I used to learn when I would go to surgery and just watch the surgeon, and you're just tilting your head the whole time trying to understand and get the right angle and visualize what's going on. Well, that robot has a front forward-facing view to that in understanding what's happening, and there's a fair amount of process that's going to happen for that. So it's going to take time. Robots are going to have to get smaller. Technology is going to have to get faster. But this will all happen. And I think when we look at adoption rates and predictions of the future, I'd say in 10 years it should be 100%. But that's a software guy who doesn't have to build the hardware. So it's easy for me to say that. I don't have to worry about physics. Like my other two panelists on the call here, they do have to worry about the physics and the mechanisms involved. So it's easy for me to say it as a software person.
Yeah. So Brad, I'd like to get your opinion on this. I think I've heard estimates from industry figures that robotics could be used in up to 50% of all orthopedic surgery within the next 10 years. Where do you see adoption now? And do you think that's a reasonable expectation, 50% in 10 years?
Thanks, Mike. No, I don't see that happening. It'd be nice, but if I think where it is now, we're seeing, and my focus is the spine industry. I really couldn't tell you where Mako and Zimmer are in the knee surgery area, the penetration and the usage. But in the spine industry, we're about 20% of hospitals that do 80% of the spine procedures. So That gets it down under 20% of the hospitals to begin with. And I think we're clearly seeing very low utilization rates. You'll see, some systems that, they're happy if they're using them 8 times a quarter. So I think it's a real challenge right now until they really get to the, much easier to use. Could I see in the next 5 years, plus 5 to 10 years, a 50% penetration into hospitals? Yes, but not 50% utilization. I mean, clearly right now, minimally invasive spine surgery is still a incubating, technique, and it's maybe 20 or 25% of all procedures. And this is where most of the value of robots comes. So you're going to have guys who are doing open surgeries who will, they'll never go to MIS and they'll never go to robots because they're getting good outcomes doing the surgery they're doing. So I think it's longer than 10 years. I think it's more in the 20-year time frame.
Great, thank you. Leanne, could you speak in general terms about how you see the current penetration for robotics in joint replacement?
Yeah, I mean, it sort of depends, obviously, on point of care, and it depends on surgeon. I think that we would say, we're probably not as low as spine, a little bit higher than that, and I would expect that it will get up over that 50% range here, but it's going to depend on a few things, and I'd love to ask the panelists a little bit more about that. What is it going to take to really get to those measures that we see in other areas of healthcare? Do you guys think it's ease of use? Do you think it's clinical data? Is there some special reimbursement that's going to get us there? I have my views on where I think it's going to land, but I'd love to hear from the others, see where they think what it's going to take to really drive it forward.
I think it's value. You have to provide value. And that value is through better clinical outcomes, or it could be from just lower costs, easier for the surgeon. I mean, a lot of this is you have to save the surgeon time. You don't have to necessarily get a better outcome. But I think it all comes down to providing value. And if you can't provide that value to your customer, they're not going to adopt it. And that's our challenge. The robots today provide a marketing value to the hospital, which pulls customers in because the customers want a better surgery. The robots can make I think the knee robots with the no-fly zones actually provide a value to the surgeon to help them do a better surgery. The spine robots, I think, are a little bit less. I mean, they help them get the pedicle screws in today. Someday in the future, it'll help with laminectomies and disc prep, and all of a sudden things will turn. It'll be adding more value. But I'll compare it to the brain, the ROSA robot. It's clearly the market leader there, and its value is in epilepsy. If you have to put in 8 or 12 electrodes, it's a huge win, huge time savings over not using one. And so all of our systems have to get to that point that they provide value.
Well, I think I would point to speed. So I was always fortunate to work with whatever company I was at, their surgeon panel, which usually comprised some of the world-renowned surgeons in knee or in hip or in shoulder. And when you're dealing with surgeons that are doing hundreds and hundreds of surgeries a year, speed in the OR is incredible. Like how different that is from a general orthopedic surgeon that you might see who's doing volume in a local area or regional area. So when I look at the numbers and I look at the increasing rate of patients every year, and I also look at the numbers of how many surgeries surgeons have been performing over the past 20 years, we've just seen this huge trend. So average number of surgeons are doing about 20 years ago, we're doing about 100 knees, and now they're doing 400 knees. And there's plenty of docs that talk about 500, 600. I know of one who's guaranteed at 1,000 joints a year. And you start to think about that increase. Well, the only way for that to happen is either they work twice as many hours as everyone else, or they do the surgery a lot faster, or some combination. So if you can do a knee surgery in 25 minutes today, and that's skin to skin, and you introduce a robot, and that robot's going to create a 35-minute procedure, that's a challenge for many doctors. So when that robot brings it down to a 20-minute procedure, which it will, it's just going to take a little more time, then we're in an interesting space. And that's how it'll become more obvious, because I can now do a 15-minute knee and I get the same results that I did when I could do it at 25, when I maxed out my entire team to pure, orchestration and perfection. So robots will become more valuable as the time decreases and the speed and efficiency are there. And, efficiency is there. It's getting the right position of the implant in the right place, but it has generally taken longer. But that'll change. And that's when it'll really start to gain more adoption, because throughput, no one wants to wait years for a knee surgery or a hip surgery. And that's in other countries, some of the things we're seeing. And when we project the data out, we're looking, 2030. If you want to wait 2-3 years for a knee surgery, usually people wait until they even are ready for it. So they're already behind their curve. Now they have another couple of years. That's an incredible amount of time to wait. So the patients will want it, the hospitals will want it, the surgeons will want it, and the industry definitely wants it.
Yeah, great point. And I think to this point, we've spent a lot of time focusing on the technology as it stands today. So let's spend a few minutes talking about the future and what excites you most personally about it. Now, Brad, I know that Fusion Robotics is very focused on the here and now and what is currently available. But as you look to the near future, what do you get excited about most personally for technology in orthopedics?
We're focused on doing one thing and one thing well right now. Having that 25-year career in Medtronic, leading the portfolio management with O-arm and the like, there's always a lot of challenges out there, and I'm fairly pragmatic. I think 20 years ago I was much more, this will work really well, and now it's sort of down to what do we really need. I think what we're seeing is, as always, we benefit from consumer electronics, whether it's heads-up displays that surgeon doesn't have to turn his head to watch a monitor, or various other consumer electronics that continue to bring us value, faster processes. I think that just actually competition amongst high-quality players will really bring efficiency down. Or increase efficiency so the time comes down. People will develop better methods and other people will copy them. And the whole industry will improve. But specifically for spine, what's really going to make the difference is either real-time low-dose imaging or no-dose imaging. Because if you can track the bones in real time dynamically, the robots can catch them and follow up with them. But we have to be able to track them. There's, I think, GE's bringing some out. There's a company called NView that can generate a 3D image in about 2 seconds at about a 20th of the dose of a standard O-arm. Those type of technologies you're going to bring into the OR, and then you're going to be able to real time know where all the spine is anytime you want. And those will be the things that enable robotics, in the world. CyberKnife does that now. Before every radiation dose, CyberKnife does a re-registration using biplanar fluoro. And so they're the only company in the world today who knows exactly where the spine or brain is before they treat it. And we just have to get there. And those are coming in the next 5 years. I think those will be what enables robotics.
Thanks, Fred. Peter, if we think of the software aspect of it, where do you see innovation happening in that space in the near future?
I think the hardware is fun. It's exciting. It's going to be the thing that we touch and feel and grow with, right? And we'll understand more because it's physical and it's in our hands. But it'll actually be the software behind it all that drives those robots and tells those robots what to do, that reads the sensors and adjusts course, that looks at the image of the vertebra or the joint and make adjustments in real time as the patient's being manipulated on the table. That can all be done with software. And I think that's the boundless opportunity. So like I was describing before, we have a lot less physical relationships and variables to worry about in software. So it's around, the hardest part about it is getting the data and getting large amounts of data to train the AI systems. But there's been massive improvements in how we even need to do that. The key aspect is when I started on this journey almost a decade ago, the computer speed was measured in CPUs, and it was measured in, she's just a low frequency compared to where we're at now. It seemed fast 10 years ago. It seemed fast 20 years ago, but it's nothing like what's happening now. And I think a lot of the work being done today is mostly on the GPU, the graphic processor. But if you think about what we're going to benefit from quantum computing over the next couple of years, it's just raising new opportunities for us to learn faster, new opportunities to scale. There's lots of reasons why I'm not in love with social media and all the things it comes with. But if you look at the amount of compute power that we have because of it, because of the Facebooks and the Instagrams and the Snapchats and all these companies, they're at scale of billions, right? They've got billions of people on their platform. The cloud has had to adopt to it. And now we have the same access. So whether my little startup that's only raised, a fraction of what ZB makes in a day or two, right? We have the same capabilities to use incredible compute power. And that's the real exciting part, is that anything that we can imagine that we can get some data on, if we can make an interpolation and imagine that in our heads, and we can apply that, test that, validate that, and bring it to market, we just can move at a breakneck speed. It's kind of like when we were, for a while we've been talking about intelligent surgery. That's how we define the category. It was that evolution from analog to digital to intelligent. And I truly believe the AI will give surgeons superpowers that they had never imagined. And I think that's a good way to think about where we're going with software.
Thanks. And Leon, that brings up a great point. As someone who is in a leadership position with one of the big ortho companies that, in a very real sense, kind of set the path for the industry, what do you find most exciting about helping chart that course for the future of orthopedic surgery?
I think it's doing just that, right? So, ultimately, we want to get better care for our patients, alleviate their pain, improve their quality of life, help our surgeon customers with the efficiencies that they have. And we want to ensure that we have a delightful experience, right? Let's make tech in healthcare the same as tech in our everyday lives, because I think today that's not really the case a lot of times, right? If you think about, talk to surgeons or other healthcare workers that are having to deal with electronic health record and what that feels like and looks like. So, the more we can help, all of the customers across the way and have a wonderful experience, I think the better off we're going to be. And the big goal is to change the standard of care in orthopedics for us, right? So how can we transform this care delivery? And we want to do it through the implementation and adoption of technology. So this idea of the ability to gather pre and post-operative data, connect it to intraoperative data, right? Aggregate it all together, these thousands of patients that we were just talking about, analyze it, and then translate it into actionable clinical insights that could enhance and inform the care decision. That's the big picture, right? So that's the road that we're heading down. That's why we've introduced kind of this connected suite of technologies that we plan to expand and grow, whether that's from planning tools and preoperative measures and making sure that we have these objective measures at every step of the way so that we can inform those care decisions and help our patients.
On the connectivity of this and the cloud base, in the last decade, I've just seen hospital IT departments just tightening the access to that. That the HIPAA and the power that IT brings makes it very difficult to get that data out of the hospital. Are you guys seeing that also?
I don't have the depth that Leanne probably has with ZB, but our customers tend to be small to mid-size medical device companies. So they might be at 100 to 200 million in revenue. So their IT team and the medical device company is almost bare bones, making sure the servers are on. And when they try to integrate to a hospital system, there's absolutely a ton of challenges with that. What's positive is that there are a number of technology companies that do the heavy lifting for you that we can make direct connections to. And when the data comes from the PACS system or it comes from the EHR, you're really getting a filtered view. Now, you still do have to deal with the hospital and their natural challenges that they're busy with, especially in a year following 2020. But there are opportunities. There are data companies that can do this and connect the dots, but it's not cheap. It does cost a fair amount of money per hospital. There's a recurring fee involved, and it's nothing's easy when it comes to integrations, and that's any integration we've ever dealt with. There's always some nuance to it.
Yeah, I guess I'd just say that we really are putting on the forefront of every discussion this idea around privacy, right? And we're trying to make sure that we have that conversation first, so it isn't something that they feel like is buried in paperwork and they have to ask about. And I think that's one of the really key leading items. And so we're upfront about it. We have policies around it. Here's, and just being blatant about how we present that. And certainly I expect hurdles along the way. Sometimes it takes a long time, but I would say that, it's not that we're having deals being held up because we can't get things through, so for that reason, right? So we're, there's a lot to learn, but again, there are other parts of healthcare that have been doing this, so now you just have to get a new part of the hospital up to speed on what it looks like over here in this other arm that they don't know about.
Yeah. And Medtronic, with the cardiovascular and pacemakers, they got around it by not working with the hospitals and, actually putting a modem or putting a station or a hotspot in the patient's home to get the data they wanted, because it's difficult. I was just wondering what your experiences were, because I think we talk about this cloud. One of the interesting things, Enview, this company out of Salt Lake that's making this 3D system, they actually went out to the cloud to do the computation. It was a C-arm without a computer in it. Mm-hmm. And all they wanted to do is be able to, plug into the hospital network and get to their servers in the cloud. And their first 7 systems, they got turned down because IT wouldn't let them. And so they had to end up redesigning it and putting a computer in it and give up on getting the data outside the OR. It's just, I think regulation is going to be a real constraint on some of these things, which is really unfortunate because unlike social media, which collects so much data on us, which is probably collecting it in this video call somehow through Zoom, collects so much. It's so hard to get that data that would be so useful out of the ORs. Yeah, I just want to know your experiences. Yeah. If anyone solved it.
Yeah.
Thanks for bringing that up, Brad.
OR processing makes it a more efficient process. You don't have to worry about getting out to the cloud, for sure. But you got to also look at the fact of now we have GPUs that we can put in a box in there that just blow your mind away and what they can, produce. And that wasn't easy to do. You couldn't get that kind of horsepower 10 years ago that you can get now.
Yeah.
Great. And I think that's a great place to leave our discussion for now. That's all the time we have today. Thanks for watching, and thank you to our esteemed panel for sharing their expertise and insight. I certainly learned a lot. So goodbye until next time.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you to our panel for sharing their extensive expertise, and thank you to those watching. You can learn more about our sponsor, Intech, at intech-medical.com. You can also access more great insight from industry through OMTEC's webinars at omtechexpo.com.